Welcome to I Drink Your Podcast, where we drink and talk about movies from 2007.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker!
I don't remember seeing this movie.
What's your power? You don't got the power.
Keeps away the narwhals.
The only way to defeat a waffle is by making it a pancake.
This is one doodle that can't be undid, home skillet.
Now back to that ass.
Were you masturbating?
I drink your podcast. I drink it up.
Welcome back to another episode of I Drink Your Podcast. I am Matthew, and before we get started this week, let's talk about a little housekeeping. So if you guys could go ahead and rate us and review us on whatever platform you're on, that helps us grow. And we got our first 1-star review. So I would like to mention that it needs to be 5 stars. Otherwise, keep it to yourself. All right. But if you enjoy this podcast or if you like movie podcasts, be sure to share us with a friend. And just, we appreciate all that, organic growth. So without further ado, this week we are watching Saw 4, and joining me is Ben, Wesley, and our guest today, Dylan. Welcome to the show.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey, glad to be back.
All right. So Dylan, what are we drinking over there?
Well, Ben and I are actually sharing the same drink tonight. It is known as the I Want to Play a Game cocktail. It's a mixture of vodka, heavy whipping cream, and raspberry liqueur with actual raspberries mashed on the bottom. It's quite tasty.
Yum.
And it is supposed to be served on ice, but we don't have any ice in my house, so it is room temperature. Room temperature whipping cream sounds as good as it sounds.
Yes. So if you guys want to rate, can I just rate the drink right now? Because it sounds awful. So many drinks I've been like, that sounds tasty. But
if it were chilled, I think it would be good. But right now at room temperature, it's probably a 3. If you chill it, though, it's probably closer to like a 7 or 8.
Out of what?
Out of a possible 10.
Okay.
Out of 100?
Yeah, I'd give it a 5 out of 10.
Okay.
With it chilled, it would definitely be much better.
The fact that Ben is chasing it with water doesn't bode well.
Wesley, what are you drinking over there?
I'm having an on-par drink, a Bloody Mary, but this one is made with Fireball rum and a dash of Coca-Cola.
So what part of it is a Bloody Mary?
The name.
Okay.
But mine's on ice. Matt, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking straight water because I'm so scared of how I'm going to feel during this. I'm actually quite squirmish, as we'll find out in this episode. But yeah, I'm drinking water in preparation of not throwing up.
You're so scared of just talking about the movie that you're avoiding alcohol altogether.
I have a very active imagination, Wesley, and even
doesn't show in your comedy.
Just talking about things, like, it gets my imagination going, and it's just like, it's so gross, and it's like such a guttural reaction.
Yeah, Matt, you said you were squirmish. You didn't even watch this movie with us this week.
Right. I couldn't watch this movie. I started doing a little bit of digging it up on YouTube, and like the thumbnails were grossing me out. I literally started to have like this small gag. So not like a full gag, but I was just like, I can't do this. Like, I watched a behind the scenes to try to like desensationalize it, like the mausoleum trap. And I was just like, I can't do this. So
the opening scene was probably the grossest, in my opinion.
Well, we'll get to that.
Right. So this week, let's talk about other things that make you squirm or are squeamish. Like, obviously, this torture porn grosses me out. So be curious what hits you guys that way.
Anything involving eyeballs just really makes me squirm. The eyes are just such a vulnerable organ. And the idea of a paper cut or laser surgery gone wrong just really grosses me out. The opposite of that, I am really fascinated by gruesome sports injuries. So watching people's legs break or their ACLs tear, like, I really enjoy watching that. It's not a fetish of mine.
Oh my God.
But let's put on some videos of gruesome injuries. I'll watch that.
Oh my God.
Since Matt's answer was so light on what makes him squirm, I'd like to bounce all of our answers back off of Matt. So how do you feel about sports injuries?
I feel so disgusted by Ben as a person. Just being like, yeah, let's throw on these people ending their careers. That's so nuts.
Have you guys seen Final Destination 5 where the girl is doing the bar routine and she dismounts off the bars and breaks every bone in her body, just crumples up into a heap? Like that's really cool.
Yeah, that's not a real example of a sports injury, though. What the name of sports injury that you've seen recently that comes to mind?
I saw an old kickboxing video where the guy kicks into another guy's arm and his fibula and tibia break, and he tries to step back on it and he just crumples to the ground.
His little jelly leg.
So I love that look where the leg is just floating there and it's bending in parts that it shouldn't.
So,
Wes
Ben,
is disgusted too.
I'm very disgusted, but it did remind me. Ben, did you love that scene in Harry Potter where they get rid of all the bones in his arms?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'll go next because I feel like Dylan's not going to be very squirmish about many things. I hate. It's hard to talk about, Matt. This is going to be my Everest right here. I hate needles. Oh, it's just the word. So I just remember very specifically also, like I've had this phobia for a long time, but I remember there's a scene in Saw 2 where she has to go into a pit of needles. I'm pretty sure, Ben, I saw that with you. And like, I remember I was on the verge of walking out, and I also never watched a Saw movie after that. But just like the idea, kind of, Matt, what you're saying about having a very visceral imagination, like when I think about a needle and like I feel it go into my skin, all I can do is like over imagine it under my skin, and like especially going into a vein and stuff. Like, All right, Dylan, what about you?
Wait, let me bounce off this because okay, a pit of needles, that's gross. I understand that, but like when they draw blood, I'm like watching. I'm like, I need to see it go in, and I'm like,
Never.
Right. I can't believe I just made that much blood shoot into the back of that tube.
Yeah, see, it's not the blood at all for me. Like
I just shot 5 loads into that tube.
I'm glad you found a way to be impressed with yourself when giving blood, but it's not even the blood for me. It's like, so I get regular medical infusions where I have to get an IV,
Mm-hmm.
and so I really had to force myself to deal with the fear. But still, every time, like, it's traumatic for me.
Got you, for sure.
Fun stuff. So, Dylan,
The big thing that makes me squirm the most is teeth. Anything that I see in a movie that's having to do with teeth just makes me just shudder and turn my face away, like Jared Leto getting the crap beat out of him, which I would love to see, but that's beside the point. Or William H. Macy falling out of off a telephone pole in Magnolia. Just those two guys getting their teeth knocked out or horribly damaged. It just makes me squirm and just disturbs me a lot.
why did we pick an intro for things that we can't talk about? like literally, the thing is, hey, what's hardest for you to talk about?
Dylan, I just went to the dentist, and I've normally been a bad patient at the dentist, like a lot of pain, a lot of just interesting pain that happens. Smoothest experience in the world. No cavities after 10 years. You believe that?
You didn't go to the dentist for 10 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not my fault. I didn't
How
have
is that?
insurance.
No, I would like you to explain how that's not your fault.
I didn't have insurance. What?
Okay.
A lot of people are like that. Anyway, just spend a little bit of time in somebody else's shoes for a half a second, Wesley. All right, so that made us feel gross, but hopefully you guys have fun listening to that. If you haven't listened to the show before, the first half of the podcast, we're going to be discussing and reviewing Saw 4. And then the second half is going to feature a Battle of Twits, a creative competition pitting Ben against our guest, Dylan. So I'm quite excited to see this movie through your description.
Well, you get to read
No,
the
you're
act
not.
summaries, so really it's your description.
Oh my gosh. So, because Dylan's seen all the previous Saws and he loves horror films, he's going to give us a little bit of a recap of the first 3 Saw movies before we get going here.
Previously on
Saw.
All right. Well, in the first Saw, or Saw 1, we are introduced to Jigsaw, a man who's been labeled as a serial killer, but actually does not kill anybody. For the victims that he choose to die if they want to. Now, our first game in the movie is Carrie Elwes, or Wesley, from The Princess Bride, and one other man are stuck in a room together. And Wesley performs an "As You Wish" and cuts off his own foot. In Saw 2, we get Donnie Wahlberg, who now finds Jigsaw, and we are now in a house of horrors that Jigsaw has set up with people in there, including Amanda, who is his accomplice. In the end, we get Donnie stuck in the same room that was in Saw 1, so he gets to spend some time with a dead body. Numbers, yay. Saw 3, we now have Detective Carrie is our new investigator, and she is trying to find Jigsaw and Donnie Wahlberg. But by the end of the movie, she ends up getting all of her ribs pulled out in a Jigsaw-esque trap. Now, the person being tested in this is a father of a dead child. These are probably some of the more gruesome tests I've seen in these movies, to give my opinion. But a doctor is then also forced to help Jigsaw through his cancer and ends up getting her face completely blown off with shotgun shells strapped across her neck. Jigsaw also is killed by the man being tested by having his throat slashed with a saw, and also Amanda dies by getting, I believe, a needle shoved into her neck and blood gushing everywhere.
So I've seen all 3 of these before. Wesley, you said you've only seen 1 and 2.
Yeah. So, yes.
Have you seen any of these, Matt?
No, I did. Somebody wanted to see Saw 1, and then I went and spoiled the movie for myself just to be like, I don't have to see it. So
Okay.
I've done a pretty good job of getting out of these traps. I want to go ahead and say it. I think it's weird. I mean, just based on your plot summary, Dylan, how come Amanda didn't get a cool name like Jigsaw is Jigsaw? Amanda
Could be Seesaw, or
yeah, she could be like
Saw?
word
Or
search,
Skill Saw.
word search Amanda. I don't know. All right. Well, I'm excited. So let's kick off this movie plot summary.
Greetings and welcome. I want to play a game.
During the autopsy on John Kramer, aka Jigsaw, played by Tobin Bell, they find a cassette tape in his stomach telling Detective Hoffman that the games will continue. Hurrah. The SWAT team led by Detective Riggs stumbled upon the dead body of Detective Carey from the previous Saw, and then the feds follow up. The feds deduce that Amanda, Jigsaw's apprentice, aka Word Search, needed help to kill Detective Carey. Rigg is told that he must play a game to save Hoffman and Detective Matthews, who's still alive. Rigg faces the first test of his game, where he's told not to save the girl from the ponytail trap. Rigg saves her. She tries to kill him, but he gets the upper hand and escapes in the car provided.
The first scene of this movie is an autopsy being performed on Jigsaw, who died at the end of the 3rd movie. What did you guys think of that autopsy scene?
Basically, it looked like they were using up the entire budget on that dead body.
Like that. I don't know if we're leaving it in or not, but this was, I think, to me, probably the most gruesome part of the movie. I don't know if it's just because it was the first thing I saw, and I was kind of less affected as the movie went on and continued to be so gory. But I've watched a lot of special effects TV shows like Face Off, where they do a lot of this like movie cosmetics and effects like that. So, Matt, I want you to listen really closely here. Part of this autopsy is them slicing open the torso and literally peeling back the flaps of the entire body. And don't they do the same thing with the brain? Like they cut the top of the skull open to like get to the brain, and like it's very meaty. It makes the human body just look like flesh. Like it was very unique, but also I think because I've watched so many special effects shows, I just found myself trying to think like, how did they practically do that? And I know that that's not a real, like it didn't quite look real, but it definitely still looked real enough to look gross.
Did it sound gross? I can only imagine just the noises that went with it were just like squishy.
Yeah, I would have to say probably the most disturbing part of that entire autopsy scene is when they open up his chest and you just hear that crack sound of them opening it up and seeing the insides and everything. That for me was probably the most like ugh thing.
It's not really like Face Off because it's not a makeup job.
Right.
It's very clearly a prop. So it's a little different than that, but at the same time, the authenticity of the way that the organs are laid out and what it looked like, they clearly spent a lot of time making sure that that looked accurate.
So I have a real quick science check for you, Ben.
Sure.
Would coating this... So, Matt, you read that he had a tape in his stomach, but what they don't say, or what you didn't say in the summary, was that it was coated in wax. Now, would that actually protect a tape in someone's stomach if they swallowed a giant thing covered in wax?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if stomach acid is strong enough to dissolve the wax, but a tape that size being swallowed, that, I don't know how he got it in his body because that tape was pretty decent size.
Oh, it's a cassette tape. Like,
well, it's a mini
not like
cassette.
A full, yeah.
But still.
Yeah, I think it will. I think it will. I mean, I just did a quick search. Your body can dissolve a 1 pound coin, I guess. So
what is a 1 pound coin?
Well, I mean, it's probably some foreign money.
Like British?
yeah. British money.
Autopsies don't just get done for no reason. They usually do an autopsy to figure out why someone died. So if a guy came in with his throat slit, like who is paying for this autopsy to be done so that they can find this tape? It also seems a little too convenient to find the tape this way.
Well, don't they do autopsies on troubled individuals to try to see if there was underlying symptoms or something?
Yeah, they had to check him for CTE.
Yeah.
Yeah, he played too much football.
Yeah.
Yeah, but don't those go to like universities?
That's where he got the nickname Saw, by the way.
Yeah, I actually talked to my mom about this just today. She was a nurse for over 40 years, so she's always my medical expert I go to. I asked her, if we know that someone's throat was slit, would we honestly have to do an autopsy? And she said, yes, odds are they would, because there could have been something involved before his throat got slashed. Was he drugged? Was he, were there internal injuries? What exactly happened that caused his throat to be slit? So odds are they would have still done it.
But then why are there some cases where people have to pay out of their pockets for autopsies to be done?
They would mostly they do that when they don't necessarily agree with what the coroner's offices come out with. Like with celebrities, they'll sometimes say this person died of a drug overdose or this or that. But then family members will pay for another autopsy to be done where they'll then find out, no, it was really due to a heart attack, but they just happen to have drugs in their system, stuff like that. A good example right now would be, again, sadly, with George Floyd. His family had to do the exact same thing where the coroner's office said it was one thing. The Hennepin County coroner's office said it was one thing, but then his family paid for another autopsy, and that coroner came out with, nope, they had conflicting information, and now we're at right now.
Yeah. Sorry
to bring the whole show down on that one.
Yeah. I mean, in that case, it's like, yeah, it's like we knew what you guys are going to say, and we have to get like some impartial fucking what's the person that does the autopsy?
A coroner.
Coroner.
So this is the fourth Saw movie. The first Saw was very low budget, correct, Dylan?
Yeah, the movie was very, very low budget.
It was written by Lee Winnell and James Wan, correct?
Yep, that's right.
And James Wan is now like a bigwig in Hollywood. He directed Fast and the Furious movies, the more recent ones, didn't he?
Yep, he did those, and he also did the Aquaman movie, which turned out to be a pretty big success.
But that first Saw movie, I remember seeing it, and it wasn't nearly as gruesome as this later one. It still had a little bit of mystery to it, and the traps were well thought out and not just like, I'm going to really hurt you, but I'm going to make you think and figure your way out. Like, it was more of a puzzle in the beginning than this Saw 4 was, which is basically just torture, and your ponytail is tied to a thing that's going to rip your scalp off.
Yeah, that's where I would say that, yeah, the first Saw is much more like a murder mystery or a suspense thriller than it is being a horror film. And it just kind of seemed as the sequels kept going that they kept trying to one-up themselves with what they were doing, make them more violent, more gory, kind of like the Hostel movies.
Yeah. How many Hostel movies are there now?
Yeah, there were 2 that went actually into theaters, and then 1 that was direct to DVD or direct to streaming.
Okay.
Dylan made himself.
Then there's the Dylan sequels.
And are there 7 or 8 Saw movies?
There are a total of 7, but if you want to count the newest movie, Jigsaw, that came out just about a year or 2 ago, that would be 8. And if we ever get past this COVID stuff, Spiral was supposed to come out this year, and that would be the 9th one.
Oh.
And that's starring Chris Rock and Samuel Jackson, I do believe.
Like I said, I never watched the third one. The second one, if I'm remembering, the first one was surrounded really only around the one incident, the one person, the one trial, the one test, the one, all that stuff. The second one had more people, but was like a house, and it was like a series of rooms, but it was still, I don't know exactly how many different like traps there were, but it couldn't have been too many. And so when I think it's the first thing that they do in this movie with Saw, like setting a trap, or whoever said it, I still don't know what the hell happened in this movie, but where the guy has his eyes sewn shut and the other guy has his lip sewn shut, and like they have to work together to get out of it, but the guy who can't see doesn't trust that the guy who can't tell him anything isn't there to hurt him. And so they go through this whole like Saw trap with basically no explanation other than like what's on the tape, and it's over in like 3 minutes. And so like me jumping from, I saw 1 a lot because it was really good. Like, it's not this gory horror movie. It was a psychological thing that was really interesting to see unfold. Like, there was a storyline that was followable. And then 2, I only saw the 1 time, didn't see 3. So then coming into 4 and seeing that whole thing happen in 3 minutes, I was so let down with like, oh, so maybe I'm let down's the wrong word. Excited that I chose to never watch another one of these movies again, because if this is what this is about, like, it's just a 3-minute Saw puzzle, and now we're on to the next thing. Like, did that even play into the story? I don't even remember.
It did, because the guy that survived that is running the game in the 3rd act, which we'll get to.
Oh.
But yes, that guy does come into play. However, the thing I didn't like about that was that it was very un-Saw-like, because it pit 2 people against each other, and that's not something we had seen in a previous Saw movie. It was always somebody who had control over their own destiny, and like, you can choose to escape or you're going to die. This was like you had to kill the other person to survive. I didn't like that.
Yeah, and you can't communicate at all. Like, there's no chance to work together. There's no chance to do anything other than like fight for your life as quickly as possible.
You can talk with your lips sewed shut. Ventriloquists do it all the time.
He didn't have his dummy.
They're lucky this guy wasn't a ventriloquist.
I feel like one of those guys is so much more severely handicapped than the other. Am I wrong in assuming that?
No, the more eyes is definitely more of a handicap than the no speaking.
Right. I can't wait for a 3-way. Is there a 3-way trap where they take away each of their senses, so they sew somebody's ears shut?
How do you sew ears shut?
Ears are just extra
ear.
skin. Just fold them over and sew them up.
Yeah, actually, in the 7th movie, they do kind of do all of the deaths or tests involve speak no evil, see no evil, hear no evil. So they all kind of go together like that, where the person has to do something to save their sight or save their speech, or they're handicapped in some way, shape, or form where they can't see, speak. It's just really, it's not very good.
The other thing that kind of bothered me about this movie and made it different from the other Saws is that Riggs' game is really just, you don't play the game and he would win the game, which is something I don't understand. If he just decided to not do anything throughout the entire movie, the movie wouldn't happen, and we'd be in the
we should only
exact
be
same
so
spot
lucky.
we were before.
Yeah, if
So-
that
so-
tape gets dissolved by his stomach acid, it's like all these booby traps just go to waste.
So Riggs was the cop bad guy that's revealed at the end.
No, Rig is the black cop, the one that's going from trap to trap. Hoffman is the white
Okay.
cop that we see at the autopsy at the beginning of the movie.
Okay. So I'm basically hairblind. I couldn't tell the difference between the cops in this movie. There were so many times where I was so when like it was revealed at the end, I'm like, I don't even know which one. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
Am I
I'm looking
supposed
at
to
the
know you?
cast. I'm looking at the cast list, and it's like over 30 people, like Detective Hoffman, Agent Strahm, Agent Perez. It's like millions of.
Yeah, it really also didn't help very much that the lead FBI agent Strom and Detective Hoffman both looked very, very similar to each other.
Yeah, they should have cast
those
them
were the
all in
two.
different shirts. You know, wardrobes of just different colored shirts. It's like, oh, that's green shirt guy, and he wears.
So basically what you're saying is they should have done like what Star Trek did and put
Yeah.
the people who all died in like red shirts.
oh, I wish that the world would just adopt that.
Live or die. Make your choice.
We're treated to flashbacks of how Matthews, played by Donnie Wahlberg, is still alive. The feds go to Riggs' place and find pictures of potential victims and begin to interrogate Jigsaw's ex-wife. Riggs must now face his second test, putting the hotel clerk into his own elaborate trap, which pulls all of his limbs off and stabs him in the eye. Ouch. The two feds find the hotel clerk and are led to a place where they discover they are targets. The guy running the game with Matthews and Hoffman is the survivor of the first game we saw in the movie, and it's also Jigsaw's former business associate, Art. Rig goes to school and finds an abused girl's parents spiked together. That doesn't. They're literally spiked together. Okay.
They are, yeah.
They're both impaled by a spike together.
Multiple spikes.
What the fuck? I guess if you had seen this, that would make sense.
A little, at least a little bit more than it is for you. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So these two parents are spiked together. He gives the woman the key to escape and then pulls the fire alarm. When the feds arrive, the female fed, okay, explosive shrapnel goes into her face when a Jigsaw doll explodes. Is that Agent Perez then?
That is Agent Perez, yeah.
Okay.
There were so many things. I had forgotten about half of these.
All right. Let's talk about all the traps.
So there are 3 traps. The first one is the hotel clerk, where Rig shows up and Rig realizes that this guy has been essentially raping guests of the hotel in this room.
Mm-hmm.
Rig is forced to strap this guy to a device that is going to be used to be this guy's reckoning. And he has to either gouge his eyes out with a couple spikes in a certain amount of time or have all of his limbs ripped off. He does not get it done in time, and we see all of his limbs get ripped off in a very horse-drawn like carriage machine, Braveheart type scenario.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I was just thinking that it was just like Braveheart.
So I have a question. So on the poster for Saw 4, is that this trap? Take a look at the poster for Saw 4, because I'm looking at it and it looks like Jar Jar Binks sitting in a wheelchair, like an elaborate electric wheelchair.
No, that looks more like the ponytail device
Okay.
that is used in Act 1 to winch a girl's ponytail and pull the scalp off her head. In this one, the guy is just literally laying in bed
Okay.
with this thing in his hand.
Looks like Jar Jar though, right?
Are you saying that the pig head looks like Jar Jar?
That's what he's saying, yeah.
Misa gonna die.
Take a look at the cover and let us know. All right, the second trap.
The second trap is the guy shows up to the school, and the parents of this deceased abused girl that Rig had investigated earlier in his career are spiked together with those what are those poles called?
Yeah, rebar.
Yeah, rebar poles. So they're
Okay.
spiked together with rebar poles, and by the time Rig shows up, the dad has already died, and the mom is still alive, pulling rebar out of her body to escape.
Yeah, basically what he did was he had taken rebar and weaved it through her arms where she would not be injured, but then weaved it into veins where if they were pulled out of him, it would bleed him to death and kill him. So really her test was, does she want to choose to die with him, or does she want to pull all these rebar pulls and let him bleed to death? And
Yeah,
let him
we've
die?
all played Kerplunk.
Yeah, they
my
played
God.
Kerplunk, the real game.
Right.
And this trap was set up by which one? And not Jigsaw, obviously.
We don't know who this is set up by yet.
Okay.
Because who cares?
Sounds like there's a lot of precision that goes into these traps.
I mean, there is. They're very well thought out and studied.
So that was something, and I think it came up in the third act. I don't remember exactly where, but either somebody says something or we see something written down that says that Jigsaw was a...
Yeah, he was an engineer or an architect, something like that.
Yeah, an engineer. So, like, we're supposed to think that just because he's an engineer, he can precision, like, put rebar through somebody that keeps them alive, but at the same time murders who they're attached to. And, like, I guess my question is, are engineers that smart?
Well, they know how to do research and find answers, so... And then the third trap that we see is the ice block scale, where Matthews is strung up, kind of hanging above this ice block barefoot, while Hoffman is in another chair next to him that if he dips too low, it would electrocute them both. Is that accurate, Dylan?
Yeah, that's right. It was hooked up where as the water would go through, Hoffman would be electrocuted and yeah, he would die. And Donnie Wahlberg would choke.
Isn't Hoffman the one that ends up being the bad?
Spoiler alert.
We've already said it.
Wait, what's the game in this? What's the trap here? Like, how do you get out?
So this is the final trap. This is the one where the way to get out is to have Rig, our main character, not go to save them. If Rig does not come to save them, they all live.
But the ice was melting and Matthews was slipping. And if he fell off, then Hoffman would dip down into electricity.
Correct. Matthews still had to fight for his life and stay elevated enough to not put the strain on his neck.
So would Hoffman have never actually died, or like...
Hoffman was never at risk.
Yeah, basically just, yeah, Donnie is just, he's sitting on the ice, but even if Rig would have waited till it hit 0 and then gone through the door, there was still plenty of ice for Donnie Wahlberg to stand on, so he would have been totally fine in that whole situation. He would not have choked to death.
I don't know if you ever stood barefoot on ice, but I don't think I could have. Like, slippery, losing feeling, probably permanent nerve damage. Like, there's a high likelihood that it's not just the choice to stand up there on ice or just slipping. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, he eventually does. If you remember in the movie, though, he does take himself off of the ice block a few times just because he just doesn't care anymore. And he's like, I want to die. So he takes himself off the ice block. And then, you know, the guy comes back and puts him back onto it and goes, you know, stay put. Don't do that.
The one thing in this movie that I did really appreciate is the transitions between scenes. And they make it look so cool because the guy will move across the camera and it will kind of just blend in the next scene. And they did this all through practical effects. There are no wipes or any of the normal video editing techniques that we see for scene transitions. It's all just the rooms being connected and they are just moving people behind them or moving the set behind them. It's just very elaborate and well thought out to do something like that practically.
So these are practical wipes where they're just kind of trucking the camera right for every transition, or was it like rotoscoped where like somebody walks in front and it's like a wipe behind them?
What they did there was, what was really kind of cool was, like, take an example with the first scene where the scalp girl is attacking Rig with a knife because her test was that if she got free, she was supposed to kill Rig. Well, there's a part in that where Rig throws her up against a mirror in his home. Well, the transition goes that she falls through the mirror into the interrogation room where FBI agent Strom is interrogating Jigsaw's ex-wife about that. Now, what was kind of cool about it is it looks like, you know, he's throwing her through the one-way glass into the interrogation room. So that was pretty sweet looking.
Cool.
game over.
The male Fed questions Jigsaw's wife, and we get to a flashback on how Jigsaw became Jigsaw in his first game. The Fed connects the dots to figure out where he might find more answers and arrives to find and kill the game player from Saw 3, showing that the events of Saw 3 and 4 happened simultaneously. In the same building, Rigg bursts into the room holding Eric and Hoffman, which causes Eric to have his head smashed by 2 ice blocks. Rigg shoots and kills Art, believing him to be the game master. Rigg then plays Art's tape recorder and discovers that due to Rigg's obsession with saving people, he has failed and killed Eric. Hoffman stands up, revealing himself as Jigsaw's accomplice, and leaves Rigg to die. We are then treated to the opening autopsy scene again, which we now know took place after the events of the movie we just suffered through.
Well, not all of us suffered through it, but...
So if you can't tell from this Act 3 summary, this movie is very convoluted. And it's not shot in a way that makes any of that very clear of what's actually happening. The editing in this movie is very confusing because it's trying to obscure the fact that these two movies, Saw 3 and 4, are happening at the same time. It's to a huge detriment to the movie because this movie is incomprehensible. And multiple times throughout this movie, I had to stop it and ask Dylan what the fuck is happening.
Yeah, there were moments where, we had to stop it and I was trying to explain it. And I was like, well, there's that. And eventually I just kind of went, I give up. I can't.
I wish I had the foresight to do so, because I just sat there one take going, I'm just going to get through this thing, I guess. I don't need to know what's going on.
It also doesn't help that in the beginning of Act 3, they start to do flashbacks within flashbacks, almost like you're a couple flashbacks deep, like it's Inception. That got very confusing about where in time we were. And at a couple times, I had to ask, wait, are we in another flashback? Are we 3 deep now? How does time work down here 3 flashbacks deep?
So
Yeah.
I'll tease my my curmudgeonly gripes for this comment that I was going to say for later, but add it in now. Flashbacks don't mean shit if you haven't seen the other movie, and if you have seen the other movie, then you don't need flashbacks because you're stupid.
Okay, but these flashbacks didn't flashback to things in other movies.
So then how are they flashbacks?
All these are flashing back to is they're not flashing back to clips from the previous movies. They're just flashing back to supply us with more information of what led Jigsaw to become Jigsaw.
Mm-hmm. Did he actually like puzzles? I would like to see more character development flashbacks. It's like just listening to you guys talk about the film and then the plot summary. I feel like the writers in Saw 4 specifically, I think the first one is actually good, and maybe some of the other ones. I'd be curious to hear what Dylan thought, but I feel like the writers specifically for Saw 4 are like, doesn't that blow your mind? Like over and over.
Well, it did blow this director's mind because he was not going to come back for Saw 4, but when he read how good the script was and how good the twist was, he was like, oh, I got to make this movie. I've got to come back. So it did blow somebody's mind.
Detective Matthews.
But yeah, the flashback we're treated to is the Fed talking to Jigsaw's wife, and then it flashes back to Jigsaw's wife telling her about the first guy he killed, which then flashes back to him actually killing the guy, which is where we see that knives trap where the guy has to push his face through the knives to get to a pad that frees him.
Yeah, he basically what happens is, he's pushing his head through, but the trap fails and he falls through the chair. And so conveniently, Jigsaw is standing right in front of a cage filled with razor wire or barbed wire. So the guy just runs right into him, and Jigsaw just kind of goes to the side and he falls in. And it just feels way too convenient, like there was an X marking his mark on the stage, and it was just like, and I move in 3, 2, 1, move, and now he's in my cage of death.
What I would like to see another flashback. Just keep going. Why not?
If you think about it, this movie started with the autopsy scene, and then we flash back to everything that happened before the autopsy scene. So really, we are 3 flashbacks deep by that point.
I can see the calculations on Matt's face right now.
I'm just like pondering, like, could you write a movie that just kept flashing him back?
Yeah, they
And
did. It's called
that was
Memento.
every scene. No. And they kept going back. So they just went backwards.
Yeah, they called that movie Benjamin Button.
Yeah, we don't talk about that movie here. Can anybody explain to me, like, I still don't understand why Rig, what his test was. Like, he protects people, so his test was to protect himself so that he could find Donnie?
So Riggs, I guess, sin, quote unquote, is that he became obsessed with finding Matthews and figuring out where Detective Carey were, to the point where he neglected his own personal life. So it's really like, can you be inactive and not help people, and in that way save yourself? That was his test.
That's a dumb test.
Well,
Yeah.
also, it's not just showing that he's a bad person necessarily. It's also showing that he's a bad cop. Because in the movie, they send in like the bomb squad robot or whatever to check the room. And, the second he sees Detective Carey, he goes, "It's Carey!" And he goes running in. And then Hoffman's chewing him out later going, "You never go into a room that's unprotected. You never do that. Ever, ever. Don't do that again. You know that."
Mm-hmm. His boss should have taken away his badge and been like,
Well,
give me your badge and gun, and sent him on like administrative leave,
he kind of did, because aren't you saying that his boss is the one that actually set up the trap for him?
Detective Hoffman, I mean, I don't know if they're colleagues or boss underling.
Well, Hoffman even tells him in the movie, "You have the time off. Take the time off. You've got the PTO time.
If you don't take vacation time, I will murder you."
This movie, when it first started filming, they didn't have Donnie Wahlberg in this. So originally in that spot was going to be Riggs' wife, who we see at the beginning of the movie, and then she basically just disappears and yeets out of there, and we never see her again. So you can tell that they kind of scrambled to plug Matthews in so that it made sense. It did not help the movie's coherency at all.
Is Donnie Wahlberg that big of a draw that it was important to mess with the flow of the entire movie to get him like mouth covered to stand in one spot the whole time?
I mean, he's no Jordan Knight or Joey McIntyre, but he's a pretty big draw.
Yeah. Isn't he one of the founders of Wahlburger, the
Yes,
burger
he is.
company?
Yeah, because, Donnie Wahlberg's also on that show Blue Bloods, and, Blue Bloods and Saw, those go together so well.
I mean, he's just got the right stuff.
Oh.
Oh. That was a good joke.
Okay, let's be done with this fucking movie.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about the franchise. Like, did they just continue down this soap opera, Dylan? Like, what happens in these
There's
Saw
only
films?
one way for you to find out, Matt.
You want to play a game?
basically, the movies just get more and more convoluted and worse as they go on. Part 7, Hoffman thinks he's gotten away with everything, and he's walking away from a burning building. And then he is suddenly attacked by a group of people all wearing pig masks.
Mhm.
And the lead pig mask takes off his mask, and we are revealed that it is Cary Elwes from Saw 1, and that he has been slowly helping Jigsaw with all of the medical parts of the traps.
I see everybody getting so mad right now.
I'm just mad because it's spoiled for me now.
oh, sure.
So yeah, like when you see all this stuff, like how you were asking about, how does Jigsaw know about, sticking the rebar in the right places and everything? That's because he had Cary Elwes to help him with it. And, he stitched the guy's eyes shut and stitched the guy's mouth shut. And in Saw 2, I think it is, he has a guy who's got a key that's stuck behind his eye, and he has to cut it out to get the key to unlock himself. And Cary Elwes stitched the key behind his eyeball.
That explains where they got all the syringes for that needle pit, too.
Well, you also have to remember that his wife did run a free clinic, so lots and lots of used and potentially unused needles that are just sitting around. Frankly, the first one is really good, and the second one, they led into the second one, which was fine, and the third one was I guess, okay too. But what they should have done is they just should have ended it at 3. You had Jigsaw dead. He was done. He was done. The movie's done. Boom. End of story.
They should have stuck with the one movie. I would have been happy with just the one Saw standalone.
Well, James Wan is really the only person that had anything to do with the first movie. And after that, he just basically walked away. But I am a pretty big James Wan fan.
Are you his number one fan?
I really enjoy the Conjuring movies. I think those are really stellar, rated R, kickback, old school horror movies. The Insidious series, I think, is pretty darn good. The first 2 are good. The last 2 are kind of meh, but for the most part, I think he's a really fantastic director.
I am really excited to see Spiral, though. If you haven't seen the trailer for that, it does look really good.
Yeah, it feels like it's like a 1970s like Potboiler, Serpico type style movie, really kind of down and dirty, gritty.
It's got really a Zodiac feel to it, though, which is what I got. It's really more about the investigation than about the crimes that are being committed or the traps.
Yeah, that could be what they're just showing us with the trailer, but we have no idea what comes after that. That could be just like those scenes alone could be it, and then the rest is all, torture porn, gore, and whatnot.
Okay, well, let's get to my dad joke.
Please. You've had a few already, but I'm excited for this one.
Dad joke. My favorite scene I saw when I saw Saw was the scene where he's seen with the saw.
I see what you did there.
I saw it first.
Yeah, I saw that, and then I threw up in my mouth a little bit.
So here's just most of my notes this week were gripes. So these might not make sense, but here's my stream of thought as this movie was going on.
These are just a few of our incredible thoughts.
I think that dead body is the Jigsaw guy. Do I need to stop and watch Saw 3? So far, the lack of colors bother me. There's much more than red in this entire world. Saying things have just begun in the 4th movie is a terribly lame.
No, I actually kind of like that. I like that line in the 4th movie because it's really telling you that the stuff you know so far is just the beginning of this movie. Whereas the first 3 movies are really just act 1 at this point in this 3-act story.
It blows your mind, all right?
Moving on.
Unlearn everything you have learned.
Am I supposed to know what's going on? I wrote that note a couple times. Last, as a photographer, the scene where they were taking pictures at the crime scene, just cameras aren't that loud.
So you had issue with the sound effects and the mixing.
There you have it.
Yeah.
Takes me right out of it.
Yeah, Wesley, you're just like my mom in that sense. Yeah, she can't watch any movies with medical stuff because then she just starts tearing it apart going, well, they wouldn't do that. Well, that's not how they do that.
Oh, yeah. I do it in real life, too. Like, if I'm at a wedding or something and I see another photographer, you better believe I am hardcore judging them for every technique they're using. Dylan, you want to give us your review for the movie?
First, I want to admit that this series is a guilty pleasure for me. However, this movie, and I say movie because this is in no way a film, unless you have watched the other movies in the series, you will be lost in the confusing plot and flashbacks within flashbacks. The characters are pretty wooden and uninspiring. The only compliments I can really give this movie is the traps are as gut-wrenching as ever, but are ruined by the horrible CGI blood effects. Spend the extra 50 cents, guys, and get some real fake blood. The editing is nice with the interesting transitions that blend the scenes together, but in the end, this movie and series is just as dead as Jigsaw himself. I give this movie 2 creepy nightmare-fueled baby dolls out of 5.
All right, so before we get into our game, I have 6 characters that Dylan and Ben, you are going to choose one of them for one of your questions. So let me find my D4. And it's a 4, so Dylan. So your list of 6 characters are as follows. Finn from Star Wars, Trinity from The Matrix, Tony Montana from Scarface, Dorothy Gale from Wizard of Oz, Ruby Rod from The Fifth Element, or Raoul Duke from Fear and Loathing.
I think I will go with Rudy Rod.
My man. Ben?
I'll take the biggest sinner of them all, Dorothy Gale.
You think it's over just because I'm dead, but the game has just begun.
Whoa.
Ooh. Cryptic.
I'm getting chills down my spine.
I want to play a game. Here's what happens if you lose. After our 3 rounds of live or die questions, it will be game over for one brave soul. The winner of each round gets 1 key needed to unlock the handcuffs around their ankle. Second place gets the sickening feeling of impending death. I will be more easily persuaded by the more gory and the answers that Matt and Emily can't watch. And to the winner, congratulations, you're still alive. Most people are so ungrateful to be alive, but not you, not anymore. What you all don't know is we had some pretty major recording issues from the first half of this discussion week. So, Dylan, if you lose, you have to create a low-budget homemade saw contraption. And Ben, if you lose, you have to figure out how to salvage and edit the discussion from the first half of this episode.
Shit. This is the worst punishment we've had.
The rules of our game have been made very clear. You need to abide by those rules. I don't know if that's right. I've copied and pasted that quote, but I feel like it's you only abide. You need only abide to those rules. What's one of those two?
Remember, everyone, in the saw trap, play fair.
First question. Wesley's Random Question. It was so fun to watch relatively unknown characters get tortured in Saw. What would it be like if the characters were a little more well-known? With the names that you picked before, I want you to design a Saw-style trap for them and briefly explain why the Saw trap is specific to that character. And Dylan, we're starting with you, who chose my personal favorite. Thank you for choosing this one. Mr. Ruby Rod from The Fifth Element.
All right. So I just broke this down, and I may have to read it in my kind of sawy voice. It goes, "Hello, Mr. Rod. You have used your mouth to lie through your teeth and destroy the world of pop culture and intelligent thought. Also, through your lies, you have seduced and slept with people just to later dispose of them and make them punchlines for cheap laughs, not realizing these are people and not objects. You have done nothing to further the human race in any way, shape, or form." His trap would then later be, every one of his teeth has a hole drilled through it and a piece of metal wire. What Ruby Rod must do is remove all of his teeth within 60 seconds, or his head will be removed from his body. His prize, if he wins, will be that maybe he will finally learn what honesty and treating people with respect that they deserve. That's kind of how I have it. You know.
How does having no teeth teach him to treat people with respect?
I'm just going with the essence that since he's a liar and kind of just a loudmouth braggart, that maybe he'll learn a little modesty and not maybe not necessarily honesty, but some modesty and not treat women and people as he does on his radio show and in his personal life.
Now, Benjamin, you chose, I think, probably my second favorite of the options, Miss Dorothy Gale from Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, and I'm not going to do a Saw voice because that wasn't required.
No,
I just want to make sure that's on the record. So Dorothy's greatest flaw is her inability to train her fucking dog, and her forgetfulness that the reason she was going to run away was to save her dog from being killed. So Toto has definitely been euthanized due to Dorothy's flippant adolescent mind, and now she must be put through a test to atone for the death of her dog by potentially putting to death the 3 friends she found along her Oz journey. Jigsaw has kidnapped Dorothy and taken her back to Oz, where her saw trap will test her brains, heart, and courage, as she must choose which 2 of her 3 friends will die. If she doesn't make the choice, all 3 will die. The Scarecrow's placed on a stake where he will be burned alive when Dorothy lights the match. The Tin Man will be turned into scrap metal at the hands of Dorothy and a pair of tin snips, or the lion will be hunted for sport by a dentist from Minnesota if Dorothy lets him out of the cage. Dorothy must make the choice and take the initiative to save a friend, which she failed to do for her best friend, Toto.
Which one of the 3 do you think she picks?
Well, I mean, she definitely saves Scarecrow because at the end she says that she's going to miss him most of all. So Scarecrow doesn't die, and definitely peace out Tin Man and Lion.
Oh my God. And I have a question for Ben. Is she in any imminent danger at all during this?
No, she is not. But she's got to make the choice, though, because she let her friend die in Toto. And now she has to choose which of her friends dies from here.
Okay. All right. I'm just loving the idea of, like, in the Saw movies, him just... he has like a big whiteboard of creative saw traps where he's like, no, throw that one out. That's no good.
It's almost like the South Park Family Guy episode. It's just balls that they just pick out of a bin.
Yeah.
See, I like the idea of him, Hoffman, and Amanda sitting in a conference room going, okay, brainstorm session, no wrong answers, go.
Right. Just like a pre-production meeting with
Come on, people. Let's think outside the box. Come on.
I like that one, but it'd be hard to do.
It seems like it might be coming a little over budget. All right, let's take it one step deeper down the rabbit hole, shall we? Write a Jigsaw tape recording explaining why your opponent has been placed in a saw trap.
Dylan, your friends trust you to provide for them entertainment in the form of your movie recommendations. But 4 words define your greatest abuse of that trust. Escape from New York. The hype that you gave to that film left your friends deeply disappointed and questioning your tastes. And now it has left them at your mercy. Ben and Wes are strapped to a chair, eyes propped open, and they will be forced to watch Escape from New York until they die from boredom. Unless you do the one thing you swore to yourself that you would never do. Vote a straight Republican ticket in the upcoming election. The choice is yours. Atone for your greatest sin by forsaking your ideals, or let your friends die.
Very personal.
Yeah.
I liked it. And Dylan, I still don't forgive you for Escape from New York. But let's hear your
Nor
answer.
should you.
Hello, Ben. I want to play a game.
Oh.
You have lived your life being competitive with yourself and others. Through this compulsion and desire to win, you have missed the consequences of the effect you have had on the others around you. You have helped in the creation of self-doubt, anxiety, and resentment in the people who love and care for you. That is why you are here. Can you deal with loss and losing in order to save the people you love? Before you, each of your fingers is under a guillotine-type device. Across from you, your best friend Wesley. He has been fitted with a choking harness. Every 6 seconds, the harness will get tighter and tighter until it breaks his neck and he suffocates in 60 seconds, right in front of your eyes. The only way to stop this is to lose all 10 of your fingers. Will you learn about ultimate loss in order to save your friend? Make your choice.
Got a little bit of a kinky vibe with that voice. I don't know why. I wasn't scared.
So, Dylan, what would you do in my saw trap?
Well, first of all, I will still defend to the hilt that Escape from New York is a good, bad movie, but that's beside the point. Given right now in the current state of Minnesota, I think Biden is up by double digits. So my vote may not count as much as, let's say, Matt's, where he lives. I would probably do it, even though Jason Lewis just kind of irks me. You want to see me squirm? Watch me in the voting booth that day. What about you, Ben?
So I know how much Wesley likes being choked. So I'd let him have 55 seconds to just kind of go at himself and then chop off the 10 fingers like right before the end. Really let him enjoy his time in this trap.
And 10 fingers is a hell of a money shot.
Right?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Dylan's voice or what, but as soon as he said choking, I was like, okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm into this. Yeah.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
I was just like, oh dear, this is violent.
All right.
Which is good, you know, for the question.
It was sexy violent for Wesley.
Ooh, you just described my entire love history. Sexual violence.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh boy.
Just kidding. Let's not put that one out there.
Is that one staying
We're
in?
definitely leaving that in.
Oh dear.
Then can you at least leave in the part where I immediately asked to take it out?
I think we have our clip for the next intro song.
Sexual
dear.
violence.
Yeah, hopefully nobody takes that out of context and put it over music.
So on to question 3. Just like Saw 4 did with Saw 3, which I learned after watching Saw 4, I want you to pitch a sequel to a movie from 1999 that actually runs parallel and then crosses into the story of the original. So, not the easiest task. So this one should be fun. So we are going to start this one with Dylan again.
The sequel I'm pitching you guys today is a sequel to the 1999 teen classic 10 Things I Hate About You. What this sequel will be is the creation of the SCU, the Shakespearean Cinematic Universe. I am going to do the remake of Much Ado About Nothing, the Shakespeare play, where it'll be taking place at Messina High, which is the rival school of Padua High, as seen in 10 Things I Hate About You. The movie will be in the same area where we're going to have fresh, cool teens that are coming up in the world. I got Ryan Gosling in the lead, Michael Pitt and Chris Evans as his friends, Hayden Christensen as the bad guy, Rose Byrne, Danielle Fishel from Boy Meets World, Kristen Bell, Jason Segel, a young Donald Glover, and Elijah Wood and Bradley Whitford, because God knows we need somebody from the West Wing, like Allison Janney was in 10 Things I Hate About You. Where this converges with with 10 Things I Hate About You is at the prom. The prom venue has been double booked with both Messina and Padua High having to share the same prom. At this time, the ending of Much Ado About Nothing, where all of our characters come together and embrace their love of each other, and our two main characters, Benny and Bee, will be voted prom king and prom queen, while Claude and Hero come together and rekindle their love for each other. Right after this occurs, then we will see Julia Stiles, Heath Ledger, and the rest all coming together and finishing out 10 Things I Hate About You. So I'm giving you a tremendous universe to kick off from with the Shakespeare Cinematic Universe, with Much Ado About Nothing, the sequel to 10 Things I Hate About You.
Okay. I got a couple questions, but we'll go with Ben first.
Ray Liotta, Steve Buscemi, and Giancarlo Esposito star as small-time mafiosos attempting to make it big by moving from New York City to San Francisco. The first act of the movie would follow them as they attempt to infiltrate the area and navigate running a crime syndicate in San Francisco. Then they have an idea that would allow them for their biggest score ever, fixing the biggest football game of the year. This would be where the movie begins to cross over with Any Given Sunday, as we see our three mafia guys setting up meetings and strong-arming the players and coaches of the Miami Sharks, who are set to play in the upcoming Pantheon Cup versus San Francisco. We then see the championship game as our mafia guys watch and attempt to impact the game from the safety of Las Vegas, where they have placed a large bet on their team to win. Miami ends up losing, and our guys win big. The third act would follow the investigation into game fixing that occurs once it's leaked, as the feds search for our guys to bring them down. The title of my movie is Taking Back Sunday.
I'm going to start with Ben, just because it's fresh. Which team is in Any Given Sunday? Because I'm not that familiar with the movie.
Yeah, the team in Any Given Sunday is Miami Sharks. And in the movie, we see them go through the playoffs, but we don't ever see the championship game. We just know that they end up losing. So this would kind of fill in the blanks for why they lost.
Okay, gotcha.
And also just give us an opportunity to have like Jamie Foxx, Al Pacino, Dennis Quaid, Aaron Eckhart, like a bunch of huge names in this movie.
That sounds like a good movie. Should probably check that out. Dylan, I could reread yours, but I kind of just want to hear you answer it for me.
Sure.
I think I kind of missed like how they actually interact and cross over. I know you said it was at the prom.
Yes.
But did I miss the part where they actually interact with each other at the prom?
Well, no, I would say you haven't. I'll admit that just the act of we can have the characters interact with each other. Yes. The script is not yet fully fleshed out here about how all that's going to come together. But where it's all going to come together, I have the setting. The setting's going to be the most important part of the script, you know. And the setting is going to be the prom. But yes, we can have Heath Ledger interacting with.
No, we can't. No, we can't.
God, I wish.
No, I was going to. Yeah, I don't want you to add to it now. I was just making sure I didn't miss it.
No, I just meant Heath Ledger can't be doing anything right now.
Yeah, you thought Ben was just trying not to get him to answer more. but it's really that he's dead. He's just super dead.
So, starting from question one, again, I thank you both for picking probably my two favorite options. Ruby Rod, I really liked the reasoning for like the choice of how he would be tortured. I thought that was really smart. You nailed the Ruby Rod character. Dorothy was a lot more traumatic and had a thought behind it. So I think Ben's answer was more like Saw 1 and Dylan's was more like Saw 4. So I'm giving this one to Ben. Question 2. Ben, I liked you making it close to home, and I will never forgive Dylan. But in this question, I felt like your answer was more like a Clockwork Orange, where it was torture, but not the same level. And Dylan's actually described the device a little better for me. I could picture it. There was just a lot more description of the actual device, the timing, the breakdown, the what needs to happen. So we're giving this one to Dylan.
I don't think you're remembering how bad Escape from New York was.
Yeah, but I also know that I do like Escape from LA. So, and the fact that I've lived through it.
Now you'll die through it.
All right. So question 3, Dylan, I love 10 Things I Hate About You. We just recently talked about this on a past episode. So I don't know if you were doing a little bit of cheatery there, but I liked that answer. I really liked the Bradley Whitford, Allison Janney tie. I thought that was really clever casting, but you didn't really make the movies come together at all for me. Ben, I haven't seen any Given Sunday, but I do understand how a mafia subplot, I knew that there was some like crookedness kind of going on. Like it's a sketchy movie. It's not like all American good boys playing football. I have no idea if I'm right or not. But I like that your story filled in some of the plot and seemed like a more realistic tie-in. So this one goes to Ben, which makes it 2-1 for Ben this week. So Dylan, you're going to have to create a homemade, low-budget saw contraption. Now, which child you use this on, that's, I'll leave that up to you. But luckily...
It's Daniel.
But luckily,
no hesitation.
Ben, you still have to edit the episode.
Yeah, I still lose.
This is more of a Saw 4 outcome,
Right.
obviously. That's been the episode. So I'm not exactly sure what you've heard so far, but if you're still listening, thank you for listening. And, join us next week where we will be listening to Ben. Help me out.
So next week we are watching the movie The Lookout with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Jeff Daniels. And we have a former coworker of mine and Emily's named Brandon, who will be joining us for that episode. So check us out next week as we watch The Lookout.
Look out for it, baby. All right. Well, that's been the episode.
Thanks for joining us, Dylan. I also I want to give you one more note about that battle. Thank you for providing me the acronym for 10 Things I Hate About You, which is 10 T Hobby.
Okay. You're welcome.
Highest praise.
I can't believe we made it through this whole episode without hearing Matt talk about how Home Alone is basically just Saw.
Well, it's because he's never seen it.
And that joke is too old. The joke is too old.
Okay, thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody. This was a fun one.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.